Hi everyone, this is just a quick tutorial to show you a couple of different ways to use watercolour paper and making abstract Christmas cards. Now I've done this one. I will post some photos later of a finished card, but I didn't quite like how I saw it done that Kelly creates. She's a calligraphy teacher, but she was using the corners of some ink pads. So I gave it a go with the ink pads and I didn't really like it. This was one of my first attempts, and this one, that was a mess. And this one, now I didn't use Stampin' Up ink pads, I used the same ones Kelly did, and I still didn't like it. This one was getting a little bit closer, and it does work with Stampin' Up ink pads, but they're a bit clunky. So I came up with the idea, there's another one, it's too rigid and structured, having those corners. So what I did when I finally came up with this one was I used my Stampin Write markers and watercolour paper. So what you'll need is some colours that go together, watercolour, let's get that out of the way, the fluid watercolour paper. I've cut it down to card front size, and what do you call these things? Aqua painter. Now I have got the Stampin' Up ones, but for some reason or other the water's not flowing really well, so I've just got these cheap ones I picked up from Daiso, the Japanese shop, and they're only $2.80, so they were really good, and I haven't ever had any problems with them. Just plain water. So what I did was I started with a darker colour, and this one is, I think, shaded spruce, and I used the brush tip end and I just drew some lines in an arrow like that down the sheet, leaving a space so I can add some other colours in. And you don't press too hard, just give it a little flick. And just so you know, no two will ever be exactly the same. I know I'm making these a point, but honestly, once you add some water to them, they will change. So the next one I use, this one is Mossy Meadow. Now for some reason or other my Mossy Meadow is really dry and I've never used it till now. But there is a way you can use your re-inkers, pull it apart, put some re-inkers in. So I think I'm going to have to do this with my poor old Mossy Meadow. It's a bit sad, I've hardly ever used it. Might be because it was in storage for quite some time while we were renovating. Alright, so then I've used a little bit of Old Olive. Now this one is one I have re-inked before, but it's still a little bit drier, but it works nice. You only need a little bit because you're going to add water. Okay, and then I added some Granny Apple Green to give a bit of brightness, and just be random. No one's perfect when it comes to watercolouring, because all these colours hopefully will meld together. And I did add a little bit of this one. What was this one? Pretty Peacock, just to give that blue hue. You know, in Australia we have blue gums, and pine trees have this bit of colour in it as well. And then just for a bit of lightness I added some mint macaron, just not much. Now this is another one that's gone a bit dry on me. I so wish we could get these in individuals. You see, I'm not getting much out of that one at all. So the next part is, move those out of the way, is give this a squeeze off the page. Don't let it blob onto it. Give it a squeeze and start adding the water, and you'll see what happens. You don't have to be precise, and the markers work really well. And the beauty of this is you can go back over with your marvellous markers, your pens, marker pens, and add more colour. But doing this on the watercolour paper, look how it's blending well. I'm going to add a bit more of that granny apple green. Where is she? There it is. A little bit more while it's wet. And it will blend in. Sounds a little bit like a alcohol marker, doesn't it? Squeaking away there. Probably because it's wet. A little bit to the outside there. Then I'm going to show you how to do the trunk just by picking up some ink from a soft suede ink pad. It won't be a second. I'll just finish getting in there. A bit more water. Now if you want, you can give this a dry with your heat gun, but it dries pretty quickly. It's very hot here in Sydney today. See how it's spread down? And you can just lift up some of that water out if you don't want it on there. Then all I did for the trunk, opened up my ink pad, didn't even squish it on the lid. I just swirled that around, added a bit of ink onto my brush and just painted it on. Made it a little bit darker. I just kept adding some. And then I just did a few little streaks through the tree because it does have branches. So there we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, much quicker with the marvelous markers, or the Stampin' Write markers as I should say, rather than the corner of the ink pad. Although the corner of the ink pad doesn't look too bad, but I wanted it to be really, really watercolory. So I'm just going to fill a bit of that in. So I'll come back later with some photos of a finished card. Ciao for now.